In February this year, Australia launched its new payments platform. It's the world's first open banking real-time payment system.
Well, to update us on the response to the NPP and to tell us about the possibilities that it's opening up, I'm delighted to say that we are joined in the studio by Adrian Lovney. He's the CEO of New Payments Platform Australia, and also Philippe Dirckx, who's the Managing Director of Swift Asia Pacific. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on Sibos TV. Adrian, could you describe the NPP and what it does?
So the New Payments Platform is brand new clearing and settlement infrastructure for Australia. It went live about 6 months ago, as you said. It offers faster payments, settlement in central bank money in real time, a new way of addressing accounts using numbers that are familiar to Australians rather than numbers that they maybe can't remember. And it offers rich data possibilities as well in terms of the ability to carry much more data along with the payment. And the other thing that's different about the New Payments Platform is that it's available 24/7, 365.
Philippe, why did you choose Australia as the market to build the first open infrastructure real-time payment system?
Well, actually, it's Australia who's actually chosen us. But when we were asked to respond to the RFP, we're pretty excited by the envisaged infrastructure and that's an architecture indeed that was planned here, but also by the landscape that Australia provided us. It was a great governance. The PMSO was absolutely fantastic. It's a vibrant and very sophisticated ecosystem of banks and a pretty also proactive regulator. So all of that make it for us pretty obvious and pretty consistent to answer.
And Adrian, you gave us the broad brush sweep at the beginning about the system and how it works, but what do you feel are the key features of NPP, the standout points, and more importantly, what can corporates and individuals use it for? How is it changing the way they do things?
We've designed the New Payments Platform to be extensible and to be able to be used for different things by different organisations. So individuals that are sending themselves payments in real time, to pay for last night's dinner, they can include, a longer message and a couple of emojis, and that's really all they see. But say for a business or two individuals that are wanting to settle the purchase of a house in Sydney for a couple of $1 million, then you could transmit documents, sale documents across the platform. It would be available on a Saturday, for example, for somebody to pay a deposit at an auction. And importantly, the money is settled in central bank funds in real time so that both parties can walk away from the transaction knowing that they've been paid in clear and available funds. So the ingredients of the platform can be assembled in different ways to suit different businesses. Another example, for example, would be two businesses paying each other for an invoice. Currently, you can in the existing payment system, you can transmit 18 characters of text, whereas in this new system, you could transmit virtually limitless amounts of data and information along with the payment. So the flexibility of the platform is really one of the things that sets it apart. Speed is often the thing that comes to mind because it's the newest thing and people are used to payment systems being slow. So speed is often the thing that people talk about. But when we talk to businesses, they're interested in things like its ability to carry data and the fact that you can send a payment on a Sunday afternoon. So different horses for different courses.
Philippe, let's look at the services that can be built on the NPP. What new opportunities will they open up for businesses and individuals?
I think indeed the great thing about NPP is that capability to build services, as Adrian mentioned, on top of it. And that really creates a huge avenue of opportunities. And use cases are plenty. I mean, we talk about e-invoicing, we can be emergency payment in terms of disaster, in terms of security space, the superannuation contribution. It could be the real-time proceed payment of corporate action and dividend. So you name it. So there's definitely plenty of them that are available and could be envisaged.
But I'm going to be slightly cruel here because lots of possibilities. Are there any specific ones which you get particularly animated about?
Well, the one I like, that's probably because of my background is on securities, is really around the capability to be able to distribute corporate action proceeds on a real-time basis. And these days, that could take absolute days before the money is actually paid to the individual asset owner's account. So indeed, that to me is one of the areas that I feel quite energized about.
Adrian, the NPP was launched in February, as we spoke about earlier. What response have you had from individual consumers in both Australian cities and in rural areas?
So we know that people are using the service. So last week there were nearly 2.5 million Australians used OSCO, which is the first service that went live on the platform. And for some of them, they're really excited about it, and we see them on social media. They're tweeting about it, and wow, this has never happened before. My mum sent me some money, and I just received it. For millions of Australians, I think this is the way it should have always been, and so they accept in their everyday life that emails, I receive them instantly, and so the financial system in many respects is just catching up. We're also beginning to talk to businesses though who are starting to unpack the real opportunities for them, and they're having conversations with their banks and other fintechs about how they can bring their ideas to life, and not only in terms of customer service opportunities, but also in terms of reducing the costs of processing payments. For many businesses, the expense is in processing failed payments, rejected payments, missed payments, and the straight-through nature and the opportunities for straight-through processing really allows businesses to ingest payments directly into their back office because consumers expect to be serviced now on a 24/7 basis. They want to know that if they pay their gas bill or they pay their electricity bill on a Saturday afternoon, that will be reflected in their account. So it really is very early days. What we're seeing is very basic person-to-person use initially, but we expect it'll grow rapidly.
And what about the banking community? What's the feedback been like from them?
So banks have obviously been incredibly busy rolling out the service. This is a big project, and it's really important to get right. And so the banks have mostly been focused on rolling out the service to their retail customers, and they're now starting to extend the service to their corporate and institutional customers, and having those conversations about how they can tailor the service in order to meet those businesses' needs. And I think we're starting to see some of those opportunities now.
And Adrian, how have businesses and government services responded? Have we seen any businesses start to build their own overlay services?
So many organisations that are using the NPP are using its native capabilities, the ones that it went live with. So there was a service that launched last week where two people, by one of the biggest car selling sites in the country, buying and selling a second-hand car. They've got an escrow service so that when the registration is transferred, I push a button and the money appears in your account. And previously that would take a couple of days, now it happens instantly. So that's a really kind of practical example. Another example that we heard somebody talk about yesterday is the government using it to make payments to people who are facing distress situations, so maybe escaping domestic violence. The government can make an emergency relief payment to that person while they're on the phone, and it appears in their account in real time. In Australia, where we have floods or fires, the traditional way of responding to that is to drive around cash and give cash to people who want help in rebuilding their lives, whereas the government's thinking, well, we can put $1,000 in the accounts of everybody that's affected instantly on a Saturday afternoon. It just makes things easier.
And this has been a really busy time for Swift, Philippe, because last week it announced it was launching an API sandbox with NPP. So what do you think this initiative is going to achieve?
Well, this is really this is something that was asked by the Australian fintech community to work with, and so the idea of the sandbox was really to enable the developers to be able to test and understand and learn about the NPP capabilities through APIs, and that really follows the launch of the NPP API framework that really promotes standardization, interoperability, but also consistent experience. And so the idea, when we built that framework with NPP, was really to define the technical environment under which these API will work, and by mimicking these APIs into the sandbox, the idea is to allow the developers, but also bank and fintechs who develop product and services, NPP-based product and services, that could then be serving the community. And that normally should, we hope, fostering a level of innovation, but also competition amongst these players.
Adrian, with the sandbox, what kind of response have we had from Australian fintechs?
The two things that fintechs have been telling us they really want from the NPP is a consistent API framework and the ability to play with it. So they can be building their product, and as they're building their product, they can incorporate the code, see how the APIs work in practice, learn from those, and continue to develop and refine their project and their product in parallel. So we're really pleased to have launched that sandbox.
A question really to both of you, but I'd like to start with you, Philippe, because there's a lot of buzz going around about Swift GPI going instant at Sibos. So tell us more about that. This is a big moment.
Yes, indeed. Well, I mean, we all know that bank customers, could it be retail or corporate, are really looking for their cross-border payment to be faster, to be transparent, and to be traceable. And that's where the GPI has come into play a couple of years back when we launched it, and that's huge adoption. And then, of course, you have domestically a number of markets, and many markets across the globe, including Australia, who have moved into real time. So we thought that it was logical and there was an opportunity for us to link the cross-border markets with the retail and domestic markets. And so we've recently issued a press release on the test that we have done with financial institutions in the region. So this was China, Thailand, Singapore, and of course here in Australia, where end-to-end payment from these institutions into Australia through NPP, end-to-end, could take anything between 30 to 60 seconds. So way far from a couple of days or 3 days that a lot of people are buzzing it is, but which is absolutely not true. But that is very encouraging, because these are time and level of efficiency that in a testing environment. And we know that in the production environment, these are way more efficient and persistent. So.
Yeah, so your take on that?
There's a lot of customer pain points in international money transfers. They can be slow, they can be expensive. There are a number of counterparties where payments can get stuck. The real value that comes from stitching these systems together is to speed up that process, provide more transparency for consumers, and help them understand where their payment's at. The response has been really positive to seeing how these systems work together.
It is a very exciting time. Adrian and Philippe, thank you very much for joining us on Sandbox TV.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.